Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing Atonement by Ian McEwan. I'll talk very briefly about the author, go into a spoiler-free overview of the book, talk about what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I'll be reading for next time. Ian McEwan is a fairly well-regarded English author. He has written several different novels. A couple of them have been made into movies, including this book, Atonement. It's kind of seen usually as his breakthrough novel. I know it was on the 100 best novels of Time magazine from 1923 to 2005. It made that list, and I think it's also sometimes, from what I've seen, taught in high school courses. I will say, just as a warning, the book involves a sexual assault and involves scenes of war. Parts of it are set in the Second World War, so if those are things that make it difficult for you to listen to this, please feel free to turn this off. I won't be going into any kind of graphic detail, but I will mention it briefly. So you have that warning. So if I'm trying to give just an overview of the book is told in 4 different parts. The first part introduces a character named Brioni, who is 13 years old when the book begins. She lives on a relatively large estate in the English countryside with her mother, who suffers from migraines, and her father, who is in the civil service, so he's gone quite a bit. She has 2 older siblings. They're much older than her. One is 23, and her name is Cecilia, and the other is Leon, who is 25. And Leon has been gone. He's coming back. The first section of the book takes place over the course of about a week. And along with Cecilia and Leon, Leon is also bringing back one of his friends named Marshall. And there is Robbie Turner, who is a relative of one of the servants who used to work on the farm. Brioni's father has kind of taken a liking to this family and so has paid for Robbie's education. And Brioni oversees Cecilia and Robbie by a fountain, and they have kind of this flirtatious moment. And there's kind of this underlying tension of whether they will or they won't get together romantically. And in addition to that, there's cousins who are coming to stay. There are 2 cousins who are twins, who are 9 years old, who are 9-year-old boys, and her older cousin, whose name is Lola, who's 15. And in anticipation of them coming, she has wrangled them to play the parts in a play that she's written primarily for Leon, to kind of get him to settle down, I think is ultimately what she says the purpose of the play is. So that's kind of where we start at the beginning of the book. And over the course of this week, through a series of events, Lola, Brioni's cousin, is sexually assaulted. And Brioni claims that Robbie Turner is the individual who sexually assaulted her. And we learn at the end of the first chapter that they have arrested Robbie. And that's where the first chapter ends, is the arrest of Robbie Turner. Cecilia is steadfastly on his side, and we end there. In the second section, it picks up a few years later, where Robbie has been released from jail in order to serve in the military. So he is serving in the Second World War in France, and that section is him basically trying to get back to the beaches at Dunkirk. If you're familiar with the Christopher Nolan movie, that's essentially what is happening from his perspective of those events. The third section is Brioni is around the same time period serving as a nurse on the front lines of the emergency nursing. So she is doing all she can to help repair these injured men who are serving on the front lines. And then the fourth section takes place on Brioni's 77th birthday, which is the year 1999. And we pick up with her at her 77th birthday after she's lived life and has become a successful novelist. That's where the book ends, is kind of her recollections of over her life, basically. So that is as spoiler-free as I can get it, the Ian McEwan's Atonement. The things I liked about it, I think that Ian McEwan is a very strong writer, sentence to sentence. I think that he isn't going to wow you with his prose on every sentence, but every once in a while he puts in a really strong metaphor or simile. There's a couple parts that were related to the English grading system that I had to look up, but other than that, I understood where everything was coming from, even though this book is set in 1935, which I think is a testament to his ability to make it feel modern, even though it's talking about things that happened a long time ago. I think, like I said, the tone that he links, just, for take it as an example, the first section, the second section, we go from this 1935 almost pastoral description of this country estate to serving in the Second World War. I think in a lesser writer's hands, those things would have felt like disparate chapters out of different books, and I think he does a good job of totally sewing them together really nicely. I thought that those things were really well done. I think everybody who likes this book talks about the ending, because it's hard not to talk about the ending of this book, and because I've committed to a spoiler-free podcast, I don't want to go into too many details to ruin it for anybody who may read it. But personally, there seems to be two camps in this book, people who hate it and people who really like it. I was surprisingly in the middle. There are things I liked about it, there's things I didn't like about it, but I thought the ending for me really worked. I think it does that rare thing where it is completely unexpected, but also the only logical way that something could end. And I think that I think this is a book that you could probably read a couple times and pick up different things, different readings. And I think he does do a good job of kind of signposting that ending if you're looking for it. But I didn't feel like I was cheated, and I felt it was going to go a different way because I'd heard, this book is known for its ending, and I think that I thought he was going to go in a different direction. But I was emotionally taken aback by the ending. I think it worked for me. Some things I didn't like about the book. The first section is about half the book, and I think for a lot of people, for me, I'll just speak for myself. For me, it felt like a slog to get through it. I think there are certain things that you could cut from that first section. He has a section about Brioni's mother's migraines, and while I think that section is really, really well written and probably a very good description of someone who suffers from migraines, some of those things I think could be cut. It felt like there are some things that were extraneous. Some things I know why they're there for later, and I still think you could maybe trim or cut some of that stuff to make that move a little bit faster. I think the second section also has some things that you probably could cut for speed. That's not the book he's writing. I think he was writing this book. It wants you to kind of live in this experience and go at its own pace, but I did feel like at times it was a slog to kind of get through, and the pacing, for me at least, it wasn't a particularly propulsive book, especially in the beginning when you're getting to know these characters. I could see a lot of people just saying, I could give or take some of these characters and they don't really feel super interesting, if that makes sense, because you're dealing with sometimes children and children doing kind of silly things, and how invested you are going to be may differ from person to person. So those were mostly the things I didn't like. There's probably one or two other things. I guess the only other thing I could think of is the character of Brioni is something of a cipher throughout the book, and you get a little bit of her perspective at certain points. I don't know if you ever really fully get a grasp of her as a character, and that felt a little bit, it made me feel a little cold towards her and a little removed. You get a little bit of her perspective at the end of the book where you see her on her birthday, but I still feel like she felt at times removed, and so it didn't feel like a full character at times. Who would I recommend this book to? I think this is, I could see why some people would be really turned off by this. If you're someone who doesn't have a ton of patience and you like to get in and you like to feel like you're moving towards a goal, this is maybe not the book for you, because I think it is a book that takes its time and it wants to set all these things up, and it's not in a hurry. I think to me it picked up a little bit at the start of the second section, but it is that first part where you are learning who all these characters are. And so if you're someone who doesn't have the patience to automatically, if you don't see the reward or see where we're moving towards at the very beginning, if you're someone who's like, I need to always have that, then it may be a difficult book for you. I found it ultimately to be rewarding. I don't know if this is one of my favorite books. I don't know if I would return to it. But overall, I enjoyed the time and the experience with it. I understand why it's held in such high regard, because I think it is well written, and I think that the ending, if it works for you, really works for you. If it doesn't work for you, well, then it's not going to work for you. But I think for the people who it works for, it really works for. And I saw on Goodreads that this has a fairly distributed rating. So I think it is one of those books that there are some people who really enjoy it and there's some people who really don't, you know. And for me, I think it's well done. I think McEwan is clearly knows what he's doing. I do wish there was a little bit of trimming, and I do wish it felt a little bit more propulsive. But overall, if you're someone who is able to give something time and you don't need to know where everything's going all at once at the very, very beginning, and you can have something, you know, move at its pace and you're not bothered by that, then I think give it a shot. I also think if you're not scared by historical novels, because at the end of the day, it's a historical novel set in the 30s and 40s. And so if that's something that also you're not bothered by, then, you know, I wouldn't call this a World War II novel, but the second section is as good of a description of what it was like in the Second World War for someone in that time, at that time, that's not a first-person account as you're probably going to get. It's just kind of about the just absolute chaos of all these things. It's almost a travelogue as he's going through with his kind of two mates that he picks up. So that, and obviously, like I said before, there is sexual assault in the book, and there is this violence and gore in the second section. So if you're put off by that, then please don't read the book. But if you're willing to go to give it a shot, I would recommend it. It's Atonement by Anne McEwan. Next time I'm reading All Over Creation. Until next time, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you have read Atonement, I would like to hear it below. Like I said, from my understanding, it is becoming more and more common to assign this book. So I'd be curious as to what discussions people had after reading it. If you can, please try to remain spoiler-free. I know that's difficult with this book, and like I said, I think that whoever is going to read it, the less you know about it, the better off you are. So that's all I have for this time. So until next time, bye.